3 months after Adrian Cole was supposed to go to prison, he was found dead in his own house. The newspapers called it suicide. His widow said nothing. His friends said too much. And the one man who might have told the truth was already gone. But here's the part nobody could explain. The night Adrian died, 2 powerful men were in that house, and by morning, one of them was convinced the other had been murdered. So before you decide what happened, listen to the whole story, because the truth is buried somewhere inside that house.
"Mrs. Cole," he said, "my name is Leonard Voss. This is Arthur Dane. We need to speak with Adrian." The woman's face tightened at once. Whatever fear had already settled there seemed to deepen. Still, she stepped aside and let them in. "Adrian," Dane said as he entered the living room, "we've got news for you." He was a heavy man, broad through the chest and shoulders, with a square face that might have looked kind under different circumstances. But tonight, there was only exhaustion in it. "And I'm not going to lie," he added. "It's bad news." "Mrs. Cole," Voss said, "we'd prefer that you stay. This concerns you as well." He waited while she lowered herself into a chair. Then he sat down, hat in hand. "Well, Adrian," he said at last, "the Supreme Court denied the appeal. In about a week, maybe a little more, you'll have to surrender and begin serving your sentence with Mercer, Talbot, and the others. As of now, there's nothing left to file that will save you." "I knew it," Cole said, lifting his eyes for the first time. His voice had the strange, hollow quality of a man who had repeated the same confession so many times, it no longer sounded like speech.
"The Lord punishes us for what we have done." The 2 men exchanged a glance. "My God, Adrian, you've lost a frightening amount of weight." 42 pounds, Marion said quietly. "He hardly eats. If you knew what these last few months have done to him." "And now he's found religion," Dane muttered. Voss shot him a warning look. "A little less weight wouldn't hurt the rest of us either," he said dryly, then turned back to Cole. "Listen, Adrian. Arthur and I always understood we couldn't carry this whole matter alone. The district attorney was waiting on the appeal. We were hoping the ruling might save all of us." Cole kept staring downward, his fingers tightening around the Bible. "But now it's obvious they've started looking harder at the rest of us too," Voss continued, "which means prison for you, prison for the others, and possibly prison for us. That's why we came tonight. We need to think clearly about what happens next." "I behaved disgracefully," Cole said slowly, in that same calm, almost clerical voice. "I dishonored the office I held. I accepted money from corrupt men who profited from vice and gambling, and I passed that money on to other officers. I deserve whatever punishment is coming." Voss glanced toward Dane. The big man's face had reddened with anger. His fists were clenched so tightly the knuckles had gone pale. Cole, meanwhile, stared somewhere above them both. Then he lifted the hand holding the Bible and gestured weakly toward his wife. "I married a good woman," he said. "A decent woman, a faithful woman, the daughter of an honest man who never stained his hands with dirty money. He raised 8 children on a lieutenant's pay. They had little, but they kept their dignity. And I dragged her down into shame." "Adrian," Voss said, "Arthur and I have wives too, families. We weren't robbing churches. We took money from men who chose to gamble, men who knew exactly what they were doing. If that makes us criminals fit for prison, then half this city belongs behind bars." Cole lowered his head slightly and fixed Voss with a hollow, burning stare. "You and the others should ask the Lord to prepare a place for you. As for me, I place myself in the hands of his servants. Only through suffering can I be made clean again." For a moment, the richly furnished room fell completely silent. At last, Voss turned to Marion. "You do understand, Mrs. Cole, that even if your husband never testifies against us in court,
The final charge against him is still enough to convict him, and if he goes down on that charge, the rest of us may go with him." The thin woman nodded helplessly. Her frightened gaze moved from one man to the other. "He became the link in the chain," Voss said. "Captain Harrow never took money directly from us, not the way Mercer and Talbot did. Our voices aren't on the little recorder he kept. But Adrian's voice is, and on that recording he mentioned us by name. That part can't be undone now." He paused. "So the only thing that can save us is Adrian's absence from the courtroom. Without him there, the case weakens. Maybe it even collapses." Marion drew in a sharp breath and leaned back in her chair. No, don't misunderstand me, Mrs. Cole," Voss said smoothly. "We're not gangsters. We're businessmen." A confident smile touched his face. "All we want is for Adrian to disappear." He waited patiently for her answer. "You mean run?" she asked. "Become a fugitive?" Voss nodded once. "But what kind of life would that be?" she asked. "For him and for me?" "A better one than the life waiting for you now," Voss said. "We've already thought it through."
He leaned forward and lightly touched her trembling hands. "You still owe $26,000 on the mortgage for this house. We made inquiries. You won't be able to pay that on your own. If things continue as they are, you'll lose the house, the money you put into it, and most of what's in it." His eyes rested on her face with almost rehearsed sympathy. "And what happens to you, Mrs. Cole, while your husband is in prison?" "We've spoken about that," she said. "I can support myself. I worked for 11 years as a secretary and records clerk. I could go back to that kind of work and earn enough to live." Her lips trembled. "But I couldn't keep this house, not unless the mortgage was somehow paid off." Tears began to run down her face. She lowered her head. Voss watched the little straw hat tremble with her sobs. Then he looked over at Cole, who still seemed completely absorbed in the Bible resting on his knees. Voss stood and crossed the room to Marion. Still holding his hat in one hand, he gently patted her narrow back until her crying began to quiet. "But no one is saying it has to happen that way," he said softly. "Before the date when Adrian is supposed to surrender, he could take a short trip and then simply never come back." She looked up at him with red, wet eyes. "He didn't do anything truly terrible," she whispered. "He shouldn't even be going to prison." "And if he leaves," Voss said, "Arthur and I are prepared to provide a substantial amount of money immediately, enough to clear the debt on this house. After that, you could sell things gradually, settle your affairs, and later join your husband wherever he starts over. You could even buy another house there, one very much like this one." Marion's eyes drifted toward her husband. Then she turned and stared out the window. It was almost as if she were seeing that curved, carefully planned street for the first time. The bend in the road looked intentional, as though it had been designed to slow traffic and protect children at play. But the Coles had no children. And for 3 years they had lived in a house worth $2 million on that quiet, safe, expensive street. "Adrian," she said at last, barely above a whisper. "Adrian, dear, it will be whatever you say, whatever you want." Cole lifted his eyes to her. They were sunken and feverish, lit by something that looked less like peace than obsession. "Forgive me," he said. "I have done evil. The innocent must suffer beside the guilty." The woman broke into muffled sobs again. She bent so low that her face nearly touched the hands in her lap. With a sound that was almost a growl, Dane shot to his feet. "You self-righteous little fraud," he snapped. "That's what you are, Cole." His voice seemed to shake the room. Voss moved quickly toward him, raising both hands in mourning. "The first day I met you, I knew you were a rat," Dane said. Held back by Voss, he stood rigid, his fists opening and closing at his sides. Cole gave a small, pained movement of the head. The insult seemed to sink into him the way a dry field takes in cold rain. "Go on," he said softly.
pour your blasphemy over me. You won't fool me with that holy act, Dane said. Or have you forgotten what you were like a year ago? Back then, you were easygoing little Adrian, well-fed, smiling, smooth. You were pulling in money by the handful, more money than you'd ever seen in your life. And I remember exactly what you said when things started to go wrong. With a jerk of his shoulders, Dane shook Voss off. His broad chest rose and fell with anger. Boys, I'll never let you down. That's what you said. I know who my real friends are. Arthur, I swear on my mother's health. Ignoring Voss's hand on his arm, Dane stepped toward Cole, bent over him, and spat directly into his face.
Cole smiled faintly, as if even that were part of the punishment he deserved. Dane straightened and drew in a shaking breath. Standing on the single step that led into the hall, he pointed a thick finger at Cole. "I learned one thing when I was young," he said. "A real man doesn't lie to his friends, not if he wants to respect himself. Whether they believe him or tell him to go to hell is their business. But when a man starts swearing by his mother or his children, that means he's lying. It always means that." Voss pushed him out of the house, led him down the path, and got him into the Continental like a furious child. Then he slid behind the wheel, left the engine off, and lit a cigarette. "What good do all these emotions do us?" he said at last. Dane was still trembling. "No, you tell me this. Who does he think he's fooling with that performance?" "I didn't hear anything false in what he said," Voss replied. "Cole has turned to religion. A genuine convert by the look of it." "Then you've lost your mind too. He was never like that. If you ever read anything besides betting sheets, you might understand what you just saw. And watch your language."
Voss looked back toward the house. What we just witnessed had every sign of religious conversion under pressure. Prolonged fear, physical collapse, guilt over the way he treated his wife, and she herself has become a kind of moral trigger for him. You don't have to be Freud to see it. "Fine," Dane muttered, "but I'm not going to prison just because Jesus moved into somebody's skull." He stared at Voss with open resentment. "I'm not rich enough for that." Voss gave him a thin, amused smile. "You'd like to shoot him, wouldn't you? Look at the street." He waited until Dane noticed the faint glow of 2 cigarettes behind the windshield of a parked car. "There's another pair behind us, too. They'll sit there all night until the morning shift comes in." He flicked ash out the window and turned the key in the ignition. The district attorney isn't stupid. The moment he got word from Washington, he put men in place. They'll make sure Cole is watched from every direction. Dane slammed his fist into his knee. "I told you already, I'm not going to prison." "We're not finished yet, Arthur." "That's true. He could still change his mind. There's still a 5-year sentence hanging over him, and $26,000 is still a great deal of money." Dane stared through the windshield. "Yeah," he said. "We're not giving up yet. Anything can happen. He might die in his sleep. He looks bad enough. Or maybe he'll kill himself."
3 months passed before they came back to the same house. A hard winter wind drove loose snow in thin white streaks along the curved street. Both men stepped out of the car with their collars turned up against the cold. "It still doesn't sit right with me," Dane muttered as they walked toward the porch. "Why should she get the money?" "Stop complaining," Voss said. "The money was already set aside for them. We'll give it to her, and she'll be grateful. Besides, who knows what she might be able to prove." After the first ring, Adrian Cole's widow opened the door and let them in. Both men's faces were red from the cold. Voss wore an expression of warm sympathy. Dane looked sullen and irritated. "It's been too long, Mrs. Cole," Voss said. "We should have come sooner to offer our condolences, but given the kind of attention our names might have brought, we thought it better not to attend the funeral. I hope the flowers arrived on time." Marion nodded. She kept her eyes fixed on them, especially on Voss, as though she were afraid that if she looked away for even a second, something she needed might vanish. "May I offer you coffee?" she asked. "No, thank you," Voss said. "We have business across town, and we're already running late." "That's right, Mrs. Cole. In the final days of Adrian's life, Arthur and I had certain difficulties with him, but now that he is gone, I see no reason for anything to darken our memory of an old friend."
From the pocket of his coat, Voss removed a long brown envelope and placed it in Marion's trembling hand. "Mr. Dane and I wanted very much to make sure his widow would not suffer unnecessarily because of his untimely death." He gave her thin shoulder a gentle pat. "As agreed," he said. Marion pressed the envelope against her chest and sank into a chair. A faint sound escaped her lips, almost a moan. "Well," Voss said, turning toward the door, "we should be going." Dane followed him. There was something heavy and carved from stone in the way he moved. Then, standing in the hallway, he suddenly turned around. "Mrs. Cole?" She looked up. "Yes?" A cruel smile twisted his face. "That night, after we left, was it really suicide? Or did you help him a little?" Her face seemed to collapse into pure despair. Just as it had the first night they came, she bent forward until her cheek nearly touched the hands in her lap. Voss seized the larger man by the arm, spun him around, and shoved him toward the door. "Enough. Go back to the car." It took Voss nearly 15 minutes to calm her down. When the sobbing finally faded, and she began once again to tell him what a good man Adrian had been, he understood that she could now be left alone.
She walked him to the door. "It happened exactly the way the newspaper said, Mr. Voss. If I had been awake, I could have stopped him. I would rather have seen him in prison than dead." Voss carefully settled his hat back over his silver hair. Then, standing on the porch, he turned to her and said, "You should try to forget all of this, Mrs. Cole, and try to forgive Dane. He has always been a coarse and ignorant man." Then he turned away and walked slowly toward the waiting car. "I swear to you it's true," she called after him. "I would swear it on my own mother's grave." Dane had already reached the porch when he stopped and turned back. "One thing still bothers me, Mrs. Cole," he said. Marion looked up at him, uneasy now, her fingers tightening around the envelope in her lap. "What is that?" she asked. Dane gave a thin, humorless smile. "Maybe your husband didn't die alone, after all." The words struck her like a slap. "I don't understand," she said, her voice suddenly small. Voss, standing beside the door, let out a quiet sigh, as though he had expected this all along. "People do desperate things when they're afraid," he said. "Some pray, some confess, and some hide their troubles in the strangest places." Marion's face went pale. "What are you talking about?"
Dane glanced toward the flower pot by the entrance, then back at her. "You really should have taken better care of the plants around this house," he said. "A man can suffer a great deal when something like that is left to rot." Marion frowned, confused by the remark. Then slowly, she turned her head toward the pot beside the doorway. At first, she saw nothing but dark soil and the dead stems of an old plant. But then, half buried beneath the dirt, she noticed something small and twisted. A shape made of cloth, stitched roughly together, bound with black thread. Her breath caught in her throat. It looked like a little figure, a cloth puppet doll stuck with pins. For a moment, she could only stare at it, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then the blood seemed to drain from her face all at once, and a cold, sinking terror spread through her stomach. Voss saw the change in her expression immediately. He said nothing. He only reached for Dane's arm and guided him toward the car. "Come on," he said quietly. "We've said enough." Marion remained frozen in the doorway.
staring at the flower pot as if it had begun to stare back. And then, with a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "No." But the men were already walking away. And in the silence that followed, the little cloth figure lay half hidden in the dirt, as though it had been waiting there all along.